By the time Clara Monroe reached Windermere House, the sky had turned the color of old bruises. The carriage, yes, a carriage, because the house could only be approached by a steep, bramble-choked road too narrow for any modern vehicle, creaked to a halt beneath a towering archway of crumbling stone. She stepped down in silence. No one greeted her. Not that she'd expected warmth. Windermere hadn't been her home since she was 7. And even then, it had only tolerated her presence, like a house might tolerate a dog that knew not to bark too loudly. Her uncle, Lucian Harrow, had died 3 days prior. A letter from his solicitor arrived on black parchment sealed in something that smelled of wax and earth. It said she was to inherit everything, the estate, the belongings, and the responsibility. Clara didn't know what that meant. Only that the last time she'd seen her uncle, he'd told her, "Do not go into the East Wing. It curves. And things that curve cannot be trusted." She hadn't understood it then. Now, stepping across the threshold, she felt the words press against her back like a second spine. The housekeeper met her in the foyer. Mrs. Adela Bloom, small, severe, a woman shaped like a question mark that had never received an answer. She did not smile, did not offer condolences. She only handed Clara a set of tarnished brass keys and said, "He left everything as it was. Even that room." "Which room?" Clara asked. Mrs. Bloom didn't reply, only turned and vanished into the darkened hall like smoke withdrawing from a dying candle. The house smelled of lavender oil and mildew, of pages too long closed and breath too long held. Portraits lined the main corridor, none of people she recognized. But all of them had the same eyes. Gray-blue, too bright, and watching her even as she moved. Clara found her old bedroom untouched. Still with the moth-bitten canopy bed. Still with the cracked porcelain doll on the shelf, its mouth stitched shut with copper wire. She touched it and remembered. A room with no corners. Not in a dream. Not imaginary. A place she'd glimpsed only once, before her uncle had pulled her away, hard enough to leave bruises on her wrist. "That room isn't for you," he'd said. "That room remembers you too well." That night, she dreamt of curves. Endless. Soft. Humming. Walls that turned in on themselves. Ceilings that breathed. And a whisper from inside the plaster. "You left us crooked. Come straighten us out." She woke at 3:33 a.m. to a strange sound. Not footsteps. Not voices. But smoothing. Like the sound of fingers running slowly over wet paper. She followed it barefoot down the hall. To the East Wing. The one she was told never to enter. The one that curved. The air grew colder with each step. The walls began to warp. Slightly at first. Just a bow in the baseboard. A tilt in the window frames. Then, more. Pictures leaned at odd angles, though their hooks remained level. Floorboards bent upward, as if the ground beneath had begun to rise in breathless anticipation. She turned the final corner, and stood before a door with no handle. Just a keyhole shaped like a perfect oval. And from inside, humming, a child's lullaby played backward. She looked down at the keys Mrs. Bloom had given her. One was oval, smooth, like bone, not brass. It pulsed faintly in her hand. Her breath caught. Her heart screamed. But her hand moved. Turned the key. The door swung open without a sound, revealing a room with no corners. None. The walls curved seamlessly into the floor and ceiling, a perfect sphere of ivory and ash. No edges. No seams. Just a faint spiral carved into the center of the floor, like the imprint of something immense having once coiled there, long ago. And in the center, a single child's chair, facing the wall, occupied. The figure didn't turn as she stepped inside, but it spoke, in a voice she hadn't heard in 20 years. Her own voice. Aged 7. "You left me here. What are you?" she whispered. The child turned, smiling, eyes black and endless. "I'm the part of you that fit the curve." Clara staggered back, bumping into the wall, if it could be called a wall. It bent under her like pliable muscle, flexing slightly at the contact. The child in the chair stood. It wore her childhood clothes, pale green dress with the uneven hem she had ruined climbing the orchard wall. Mud-stained socks. One black shoe missing. And her face. Down to the scar on her left temple, the one she didn't remember getting but always felt tingling in the cold. Its eyes, though, those were wrong. Too large. Too still. Like they were watching through her. "You left," it said, again with her 7-year-old voice. "But you never really walked out, did you? Your feet still remember." Clara backed up. "You're not me." The thing tilted its head, considering. "You're right. I'm the shape the house made of you when you left part of yourself behind. I waited for you to finish growing." Behind her, the doorway had vanished. The room curved endlessly now, as if it had rolled over and locked her in. She pressed her palm to the surface where the door had been, smooth and pulsing faintly. No seams. Just a murmur beneath her skin. A voice, the house's voice, whispering. "You stepped into the cornerless place. There is no way back except inward." She turned. The child, her other, was gone. The chair sat empty, gently rocking in a breeze that didn't exist. But in its place, on the spiral carved into the floor, lay a trail of small footprints. Dustless. Damp. Leading toward a wall. No, into a wall. As if something had stepped through it. Clara followed. And the wall opened at her touch. No sound, no resistance. Just folded inward, revealing a staircase. Descending into the curve. Lit by nothing. And yet, she saw. The steps weren't made of wood or stone. They were made of memory. Each one flickered beneath her bare feet, showing images with every contact. Her uncle's face, stern and distant. Her mother weeping on the train platform, never looking back. A red ribbon floating in a bathtub. The tooth she lost and never found. The girl in the mirror who didn't blink when she did. At the bottom, a door waited. Painted shut. Carved into it, barely visible, a spiral of names. All hers. Clara, Clary, Clarette, Claire, Cloven. The final one was not hers. It was Clara, pronounced like a breath through teeth. She reached out, touched it, and the wood shivered beneath her fingertips. The door opened inward. It was a nursery. Not hers. Not exactly. But nearly. Everything too familiar, too soft. The kind of room that remembers being cried in. Rocking horses warped with mildew. A mirror above the dresser, oval, faceless. A bassinet in the center, draped in velvet. It moved. Rocked slowly. Not from wind. From breath. She stepped forward. Each motion echoed inside her, as if her bones had been replaced with tuning forks. She reached for the bassinet. Pulled the veil aside. Inside. Not a baby, but a curled shape of wet fabric, stitched crudely into the shape of a child. No mouth. No hands. Just black thread where a face should be. The tag stitched into the chest read, "Made from what was left." Behind her, the door slammed shut. The spiral etched into the floor began to glow. And the mirror, the faceless one, began to ripple. It formed a shape. Not her reflection. But the girl again. The child self. Only now she stood inside the mirror, pressing her palms to the glass. Whispering. But the sound came from inside Clara's ears. "You forgot your corners. But I didn't. I kept them sharp so you'd know the way out." "There is no way out," Clara said, trembling. "There is. But you have to become the room. Just like me." The doll in the bassinet sat up. It turned its head, without moving any parts, and looked directly at her. Its black-stitched mouth began to unstitch, one loop at a time, revealing nothing inside, only depth. Clara fell to her knees. Her breath fogged the glass of the mirror, though the air was ice-cold. Behind her, the spiral hummed louder. And then she remembered. When she was 7, she had entered this room. Only for a moment. Only because she was chasing the sound of singing. And she had seen the curved walls, felt the room tilt around her, and heard her own voice say, "Let me stay." Her uncle had pulled her out, but she had left something behind. A name, a thought, a piece. And now it had grown teeth. The doll stood. It walked to her, held out its threadbare hand. The mirror child watched, smiling. The house needs its shape back. You made it lopsided when you grew up crooked. What if I refuse? Then we'll stay like this, curving inward, until there's no room for anything but the spiral. The room began to turn, physically, spinning like the inside of a great eye, drawing everything inward. The bassinet, the chair, the crib, the light, the mirror, Clara, all spiraling into the center, where the spiral on the floor now gaped open. A tunnel, lined with red velvet, lined with teeth. She tried to run, but the curve brought her back, again and again, always to the center, where the child waited, and the spiral whispered, "We remember how your feet felt when they left. Now walk the memory backward." Clara no longer knew if she was standing upright. The room spun slowly but relentlessly, its curved walls folding inward as if the house were inhaling. Not collapsing, coiling, like the ribs of some sleeping creature returning to a fetal shape. Her equilibrium rebelled. She fell to her knees again, hands scraping against the spiraled floor. But it wasn't wood anymore. It pulsed like skin. And beneath it, something breathed. The doll child stood at the edge of the spiral center, head tilted, black stitches unraveling where a mouth should be. It didn't speak. It just opened its arms, beckoning. Behind her, the mirror child mirrored the motion, from the reflection that wasn't a reflection at all. "Don't you see?" The voice echoed, not in her ears but in her teeth. "This is the place where your outline was forgotten. We kept the shape. You only need to fit it again." Clara gritted her jaw, stumbling backward. "You're not me." "You're right," the mirror said. "I'm the version of you the house didn't spit out." From the tunnel at the spiral's core came a deep, slow grinding sound. Like millstones. Like bone wheels turning. And then, a whisper from deep below, not human, low and fluid like kelp brushing a sunken hull. The curve was never cursed. It was correction. Corners lie. Spirals remember. She backed toward the wall, but the wall no longer existed. It had peeled away, become mist or memory. Only the spiral remained. And everything in it was her cradle, her drawings, her bloodied knee from age 5, her father's ashtray, the scissors she'd once used to cut her braid in a tantrum. The things she'd forgotten. All placed precisely along the curve. Laid out like evidence in a case against her. Her breath came ragged now. Inside her chest, something else moved. Something not fully her. It shifted when she resisted. Hummed when she gave in. The longer she stood inside the room, the more her limbs forgot how to bend at angles. Her elbows wanted to round. Her fingers wanted to coil inward. The mirror cracked. But it didn't shatter. It peeled. Like a skin revealing what had always been underneath. The reflection stepped forward, no longer confined to glass. It wore her face perfectly now. Not the child's, not a mimic, hers. Age 32. Eyes gray-blue. But the smile was too calm. Too absolute. It moved like it owned the space between thoughts. And it whispered, "We can't both keep the name." "Why?" Clara asked. "Because only one of us can fit back into the house." The doll child opened its stitched mouth fully now. From within, a wind spilled out, dry, saltless, but filled with whispers. 1,000 variations of her name. Clara, Clara, Clarin, no one. And below them all, a sound, low, drumming, hungry, like a heartbeat made of tides. The spiral began to rise. Not just spin, ascend, lifting her gently into the air, along with everything else. She tried to scream, but sound had no weight here. Only shape, only rhythm. And hers was wrong. The knot Clara circled her like a shark that had learned to walk upright. Every movement was curved, graceful, unnatural. A smile still on her face. You left us unfinished when you walked away at 7. You thought memory was yours to control. But the house never stopped remembering. Clara shouted, "You're just a wound I forgot to stitch." The knot Clara blinked. And when her eyes opened again, they were mirrors. And Clara saw herself in them, only not from now. Not from any year she remembered. She was swaddled, blood-slick, just born. And in the reflection's arms, another infant. Identical, but silent, unmoving, eyes closed. There were two, the reflection whispered. One breathed, one remembered. The spiral kept both. And suddenly, she did remember. A lullaby with only one verse. Her uncle carrying something small and wrapped, out to the orchard. Her mother's grief that turned to silence. And the room that had no corners, sealed shut until she asked about the second crib. It wasn't her. It was her twin. Stillborn. Or so they'd said. But some things don't need air. Some things only need to be remembered in the right shape. The spiral opened wide. Below, a mouth waited. Vast. Wet. Velvet-lined. Teeth of childhood toys. Tongue made of letters never sent. And breath that echoed the one she had taken at birth, alone. Not Clara reached out. No malice. Just invitation. All we want is symmetry. You can stay and become the room. Or leave and carry the curve forever. Clara looked down at her arms. They no longer ended at her wrists. They turned. Subtle at first. Then more. She was beginning to fit. To become what the house wanted. What the spiral needed. But then, she reached into her pocket. And felt a corner. A paper scrap. From the letter her uncle had sent. The one that summoned her here. She pulled it out. And in jagged ink were 5 words she hadn't seen before. You were never the spare. She held it like a blade. Pressed it to her skin. Spoke aloud. My name is Clara Eleanor Monroe. I was born to breathe. The spiral screamed. The mouth recoiled. And the reflection began to flicker. Crack. Fracture. The spell broke. The room spasmed. The floor dropped away. And Clara fell. Upward. Back through the memory stairs. Through the dull nursery. Through the curve. Through the breath. And into herself. She awoke on the foyer floor. Sobbing. Shaking. But her arms bent again. Her fingers straightened. And when she looked down, her shadow had corners once more. The house was still. Not quiet. Still. As if it had paused mid-breath, unsure whether to exhale or swallow. Clara lay on the foyer floor for what felt like hours. The spiral was gone. No hum in the walls. No curve underfoot. Just cold air and moonlight sliding through warped window panes. But the silence didn't comfort her. Because it felt watchful. Like the house hadn't let go. Only waited. She stood slowly. The bruises on her palms were shaped like tiny teeth. The hallway remained unchanged, all the old portraits watching, warped and tight-lipped. She met their gazes this time. Held them. And for the first time, they didn't seem like strangers. They looked like possibilities. Branches from the same root she had nearly forgotten. She made her way to the east wing. No resistance this time. No warped air or humming walls. Just dust. Just an old door, shut and crooked on its hinges. When she touched it, the keyhole was gone. The spiral on the floor had faded to a faint imprint, like skin pressed too long into cloth. The mirror was cracked. But still. No movement within. No other self watching. Yet something remained. In the silence. a presence that hummed low in her bones. It wasn't malicious. It was longing. A sensation she recognized now, because it had always lived in her too. That feeling of being unfinished, mismatched, one shoe too tight, one shadow too short. She returned to the library, lit a candle, opened the velvet journal she had found her first night. There were new pages now, blank at first glance. But when she touched them, ink bled up through the paper like veins. Words formed, slowly, unevenly, as if being remembered rather than written. You stepped into the room with no corners, and made a choice. You chose shape, but not at the cost of shadow. Below that, a line that hadn't been there before. She sleeps now, not gone, but full. In the days that followed, Clara walked the house as if learning a forgotten language. The corners had returned, but only most of them. One hallway still bent subtly inward. A mirror in the guest bedroom refused to reflect her unless she tilted her head just right. And some nights, when the wind blew through the keyholes, it carried a voice that sounded almost like hers, younger, softer, saying, "We're even now." Mrs. Bloom returned 3 days later. She knocked, politely, carrying a box of apples and a letter. She didn't ask what Clara had seen, but when she handed over the sealed envelope, her eyes lingered, searching, almost hopeful. The letter was from the solicitor. Inside, confirmation of full inheritance. All titles, all land, all responsibilities. But something else, too. A footnote in the margins. In handwriting she recognized as her uncle's. The house keeps what you leave. It offers what it grows. It does not lie, but it does remember too much. Be careful what you make inside it. Clara set the letter down. Her fingers were still cold, but her mind was clear. For the first time in years, her breath didn't catch in the middle of her chest. She could see through to the end of a hallway without doubting it would bend behind her. And when she looked into the mirror by the stairs, only one reflection stared back. No child, no mimic, just Clara, with a new corner behind her right eye. A room-shaped memory that would never fully fade. She stayed, not because she had to, but because the house was not just a place of blood and inheritance anymore. It was a body. And like all bodies, it needed someone who knew where the bruises lived. Some nights, she hears the spiral stir. Not to trap her, just to breathe. It knows now that she is not unfinished, that she chose, that she remembers, and that she brought her corners back with her.